at Parsons, Paris, where she developed her thesis project on the investigation of air pollution in natural spaces using open source sensing technology and sonification techniques. In her work, she examines the intersection of environments and the digital technologies through research and artistic practices. Her goal is to discover a tangible and accessible way to comment on, augment, or improve our relationship with nature through technology. So that answers the theme of our session, which I forgot to mention. It's EcoAesthetics and data. And Amanda will give us a presentation of a study of scarred landscapes. Please take the floor, Amanda.
Hello, thank you for that introduction. And thank you to Open Fields for inviting me to this conference and giving me a space to share my work. Let me just share my screen really quick so we can start. Sorry about that. Is it sharing the correct screen? Okay, so is it sharing the correct screen? Okay, so yes, thank you again for inviting me. My name is Amanda, and I'm an American artist from the United States. And in my work, I'm interested in how technology has shaped and been shaped by human interventions in environment, and how we can use technology as a meaningful mediator between ourselves and nature, especially in a post-COVID world where the meaning of our connections has been shifted. So my research started as an investigation into scarred landscapes, which I have defined as landscapes that have been marred as a consequence of human technological innovation. The scarring does not have to be visible or physical, as it would be when looking at the altered form of a quarry in the landscape, or a city block, for example. It could be ecological, hiding in the small molecules of pollution that permeate the soil or drift through the air. Photographer Edward Burtynsky uses this term to describe the desolate and abused landscapes that he documents. And I quote, "What is at first glance merely a scarred landscape becomes poetic evidence of resources spent, nature transformed, as well as realized or failed hopes and dreams. These landscapes, while representing the exploitative nature of resource extraction, describe the evolution of human interaction with their environment." So encounters with these landscapes, I think, occur daily for everyone, including myself. When I began speculating about this term, when I revisited the Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri, where I'm from, where I spent much time with my family when I was growing up. And so this lake is a man-made lake, and human intervention in this river system, which created the lake, and this was ultimately my first passage into an environment that was truly a mix of a natural and constructed space. This space was the beginning of my own personal interaction and relationship with nature, and the first place to make me question as a young child how we interact with natural spaces. When we were there, we would fish, hike, swim, and boat, and even though in my mind at the time we were coexisting with this lake, we were still using destructive technologies to facilitate our relationship. So this lake has quite an interesting history by itself. It's a man-made lake as a result of the construction of the hydroelectric Bagnell Dam, which was built to power the area in 1931. The introduction of this construction project into the area brought around a local economic boom to this rural Missouri region during the Great Depression, and it provided many jobs to desperate workers, which created a town in a once wild region. At the time of the construction, the Lake of the Ozarks was the largest man-made lake in the United States, and one of the largest in the world. But now this lake which was once a river, is now a big tourism hub in the Midwestern US, where more than 5 million people visit annually. And while it has been beneficial economically for the area, it means that the tourists bring a lot of trash and destructive behaviors into the space. The lake is only barely safe enough to swim in, and several times a year, certain areas are quarantined because of dangerous levels of E. coli. Because the dam changes the natural flow of the water through the region, bacteria doesn't continuously circulate out of these small coves like it naturally should. Lots of littering and trash dropped in the lake from high populations of tourists, especially in areas of the lake, such as what we call Party Cove, which the New York Times writer called the oldest established permanent floating bacchanal in the country. In 2009, the Coast Guard labeled this one of the most dangerous waterways in the United States. However, when I think about this dam, which if it had never been built, my own relationship to nature that I developed while I was growing up here, as well as my definition of it, would be radically different. While it served as a familiar and comfortable space for me to develop my own connection with nature, human involvement in the area has been detrimental to its ecology. So I went back to this dam to try and re-examine it from a more critical perspective. So the whole town has been dominated by Ameren Electric, which took over for Union Electric, who was the original energy company who built the dam. And you can see from this huge sign, which appears right when you enter the town, that this company has a very controlling presence in the community. I was researching what actions this company takes to maintain the health of the lake ecosystem, and I realized that a good portion of the data that's available via government water testing is actually sponsored by this company. So we have to understand that this data has a political motivation. And that is when I decided to try and collect data for myself as a way to try and connect with the space using my own tools. As open data and citizen data becomes more readily available, I wanted to experiment with what these possibilities mean for artists. So in this work, I'm examining how technology has impacted the environment by looking at how we have altered and scarred the landscape. By developing an open source, multi-layered sensing and sonification device, which allows me to reveal invisible information about the environments that I plan these natural escapes in. The device is my tool of engagement as I travel to different landscapes, and while it serves as a scientific tool for collecting environmental data, it is also an instrument of interpretation, as it creates a generative soundscape based on data that I collect, combined with the nature sound recordings of the spaces that I investigate. The first prototype that I created for this project, which you can see here, is this orange box with all of the sensors built inside of it. This prototype is the one that ended up being the most practical for traveling, as it's very strong and self-contained. Its form is very unnatural and produced using orange as a kind of warning color in the relation to the types of dangerous data that it's collecting. I researched and tested collecting multiple types of data, including soil quality and water quality, but I found that testing that air pollution was the most universal type of pollution information that I could collect, and that the electronic components that I used were the most widely accessible. So one of the spaces that I traveled to after reinvestigating this lake was THINGVELLIR in Iceland. And so all of the electronic components that I used to build this device were based on open source hardware and the code that is all available on GitHub. The types of data that I decided to collect are dust particles or PM2.5 particles, which are basically particles that have a decent mass that are floating through the air, natural gas, and smoke or town gas that comes from cars. I wanted to sonify the data in order to reveal all of this invisible information, not just looking at physical alterations in these spaces, and I wanted to be able to hear the difference between spaces instead of just approaching it from a visual perspective. We've permeated everything, and these places that are super visibly polluted are not the only ones. The second prototype, I started testing in the Fontainebleau forest in France, and I wanted to create basically a bungee system that I could use these components to attach to any kind of object. And so I used, in this case, a walking stick, as it serves a walking stick that serves as sort of a grounding point for me into these spaces. With this walking stick, you can actually plug in your headphones and hear a live interpretation of the pollution data so that you can listen to it actually like a radio. For this piece, I was also inspired by the electric poles that I showed earlier coming from the Bagnall Dam and how they emerge from the landscape. They're almost like trees themselves, with branched wires that connect people through electrical networks. So yes, this prototype was removable and attachable to any kind of stick-like form, and it sonifies data while grounding me into my environment. And I wanted this kit to be as compact as possible so the user can bring it and attach it to different objects that they encounter in different kinds of environments. For it to be as versatile as possible. The idea is that you can come into the environment with only the kit and find something find something from the environment in order to connect yourself to it. And so while my first prototype for this project was this all-inclusive orange box, this one encourages the user to interact with materials and objects that they find readily available in the environments that they're researching. So for all of the spaces that I visited, I have a kind of personal connection to them in some way. Either I have childhood memories there, or I've spent a memorable time with loved ones there, with a natural environment that facilitates my experience. I feel that it's super common to have this kind of natural getaway, but I wanted to ask viewers, what does it mean to escape into nature? Is it really an escape? Where does the border lie between everyday life and natural escapes? Is it a physical border? Is it visible or invisible? For example, one of these places that I filmed and collected data in was in Tampa Bay in Florida, in the United States. Tampa Bay is an important estuary in Florida that in recent years has been stressed by increased commercial and recreational waterway uses. The bay was seriously polluted in the early 1980s, which resulted in a sharp decline of sea life and decreased recreational use. But now we can see this clear border between inhabited and natural spaces, as you can see from this kind of fence that separates the lawn where visitors are meant to relax and the protected bay. But I wonder what kind of dialogue this proposes about the relationships between them. During my research, I investigated a few spaces which I consider to be in this kind of bizarre border spaces between inhabited and natural, scarred and urbanized. And each place is has a different spot on the scale. And they include THINGVELLIR National Park, which I showed previously. Of course, the Lake of the Ozarks, where I investigated in more residential spaces as well as around the dam. Tampa Bay and Fontainebleau in France. And I also want to ask if in a post-COVID environment, do we feel the borders of these spaces differently than we did before? So I took all of my devices to these places to question this notion through data collection. Environmental sensors is how we currently understand the movements of nature and how the Earth is changing. Our perception of this environment is, on a global scale, is built around these technologies. The IoT reactions to sensors replaced the notion of environmental stewardship with a technological one. As the data that I was collecting was about air pollution, which is invisible to the naked eye, I wanted to keep the representation of the data invisible as well, which is why I decided to present it with sound instead of visuals. These videos were taken as I was recording data from each environment, placing the viewer in my shoes and seeing what I saw as I was collecting information. In the videos that I created, I included information about the types of conditions that you would be able to feel as if you were in each environment, while leaving the pollution data that I collected invisible and only to be experienced audibly. So the kinds of while my devices serve as scientific tools for collecting data, they also produce the sonification of the pollution data that I've collected. The sound is a patch created in the open source music programming environment Pure Data, and the sounds are deep and electronic, referencing the artificial nature of the pollutants that they are sensing. Depending on the pollution levels of the area, the sounds range from low and steady to aggressively high frequency. When you are collecting pollution data, there tends not to be a huge variation in numerical figures for one space. What this means for the sound is that instead of creating a melody, we're creating a kind of soundscape of the pollution to create a kind of pollution identity of the space. And so now I can give you a little introduction to what the soundscapes sound like using the example of Bagnall Dam that I presented in the beginning of this presentation. Right, in the interest of time, I'll stop my video there. And I wanted to say thank you for having me in this conference, and I guess we can discuss if there are any questions now.
Thank you so much, Amanda, for a wonderful, interesting presentation. I can't see questions for you yet in the chat, but I was very interested in the clear connection you made between your data and aesthetics. So you were very tight onto the title of this panel. So, and you said a little bit about how you thought, what was your thinking behind the sonification choices you make. But could you see something more about that?
About the types of sounds that I was using?
Yeah, and how you choose them. You were talking about having personal relations to places. Does this influence the sounds you choose, for instance?
Yeah, I think I used 3 different kinds of sounds. One of them, I wanted to bring this reference of a Geiger counter into place, because earlier in my research, I was also looking into sites that had been influenced by radioactivity and nuclear actions there. And I love this sound as well. And so I think we could hear that a bit in the video. And the rest were kind of different frequencies of drone music as well.
Any other comments? Karla says, thanks, great project, Amanda. Here in the chat.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Amanda. I think we will go on to Oksana, and then Michal will come after Oksana. Are you ready, Oksana?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Great. Yes, I hear you perfectly. Please take the floor.
Okay, thank you. I will share my screen now. Can you see my presentation? Is it okay with sharing screen?
It is okay. Now it's full screen. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will speak about exploring ecodata within art, science, and society program within IMERA. IMERA is the Institute for Advanced Study of Aix-Marseille University in France. And
Oksana, sorry, I forgot to introduce you.
Okay.
I should do that so you don't have to do it all yourself, you know? I'm very sorry about that, but Oksana, I'm very happy to have you. Oksana CHEPELYK is a leading researcher of the New Technologies Department, Modern Art Research Institute of Ukraine, and author of book The Interaction of Architectural Spaces, Contemporary Art and New Technologies from 2009, curator of International Festival of Social Sculpture, Kiev. Oksana studied art in Kiev, followed PhD course in Moscow, Amsterdam University, and Banff Center, Canada, Bauhaus Dessau, Germany, Fulbright research program at USLA in United States. And she has several awards, ArtsLink 1997, 2007, Film Video 99 from Italy, EMAF 2003, Verklighets Award from Germany 2003, Artraker Award UK Best Project 2018 Taiwan, and her works has been shown in MoMA New York, MMA in Zagreb, German Historical Museum, Berlin and Munich, Museum of the Arts History Vienna, MCA Skopje, MUT LA, Art Arsenal Museum Kiev, Digital Media Valencia Spain, Maxul Maracaibo Venezuela, The File Sao Paulo, and finally, LPM, Amsterdam. And the title here is Exploring Ecodata within Art, Science and Society program at IMERA. And I'm sorry, but I really wanted to give the introduction. So please, Oksana.
Okay, thank you very much for this introduction, and I'm happy to be part of this wonderful event. To continue, as exploring eco-data within art, science, and society program at IMERA. IMERA, it's a Institute for Advanced Study in Aix-Marseille University. It's a large university in Marseille, in France, under a roof of which there are many institutes. And so I've been invited there to research dead zones, global data, and local ecosystem project. Actually, I would like to make a short introduction about dead zones, because we've been introduced to dead zones very early in 1986 after the Chernobyl. So this was piece created for FIAC, Breakfast on the Grass, referring to the impossibility to have breakfast on the grass after the Chernobyl. And on those plates, there were like small cube of the graphite. So this is the graphite uranium core used for the power plant. This is the image after the Chernobyl catastrophe. And we have the Chernobyl radiation map because the wind brought the radiation toward north. And actually, because the Sweden Meteorological Station discovered this, we become to be aware of the Chernobyl catastrophe. Otherwise, it would be hidden from us, as many other catastrophe in USSR. So for me, it was very important to think about how to make this invisible radiation visible. And so in 1996, I approached the meteorological station in Kiev, trying to manage with the data-driven installation of the title Noosphere, virtual noosphere in Kiev, broadcasting this data from meteorological station on the clouds. So this my approach, how to make invisible visible. I continue in Media Art Backup Festival environment in 2003. Having the visual information from NASA server, real-time information capturing the meteorological situation around the globe, and together with the David Stowe professor, in that time associate professor in Santa Fe, we managed to make kind of scanner of this visual material to make these events, changeable events, audible. So, my another project of the title Genesis, which I started in 2004, also born from the Chernobyl, because the Chernobyl situation was very influenced for our country and for the fertility as well, and for the future of the children and for the health, etc. So this installation was working as a real-time birth rate monitoring in Ukraine, and I installed this installation in different country and different city. In different country, it works as a in different contexts, which is also interesting because, for example, in Santa Fe, the Los Alamos with the atomic Manhattan project is closed. So it referred to different context. Another project I did in 2000 with the Bauhaus, the Dessau Visual Sea Tower, was concerned about ecological and social situation in the favela of Rio de Janeiro. So this virtual sea tower has like 2 stages going up to the level that you can see the sea, and then during the night serve as a screen for the interview of the inhabitant on the balloon. The balloon will serve as a screen delivering these messages. So this was like social part of this project. And recent project I've been participating were concentrated on ecology. A couple of them, where do we go from here, was shown in Izolatia Center for the Art and Cultural Platform. And this is plastic bags of the size of the country, which is in the Atlantic Ocean. Last year, Nicolas Bourriot presented exhibition within Istanbul Biennale of the title The Seventh Continent. So this is already the size of the continent. And another exhibition, Emergent Tributary, also in 2018, dedicated to the blossoming phenomenon of Dnieper River. The theoretical background and starting point for us was the Andrew Brown's 6-level models from art and ecology now book. These 6 levels: review, reform, research, reuse, recreate, and react. And so this phenomenon you can see as algae bloom in Dnieper River caused by cyanobacteria. Also because of this Dnieper Cascade hydropower plants, which transformed Dnieper River into stagnant swamp and provoked very big also ecological problem. And algae bloom, it's a very interesting bacteria because due to activity of algae bloom, we have atmosphere on our Earth. But recently, it's become to be toxic, producing the dead zone in the water. Actually, it's a maritime bacteria, but it's become to be part of the river as well, which is also unusual. And not only in Dnieper River, but in Mississippi, also in Gulf Mexico, in Baltic Sea, we can see this phenomenon as a dead zone. So this was my idea for the project. And in this project, I also did the installation, The Water Come Into My Soul, with those like 3D printing object, which should represent speculative design of the cleaning water organism. And I mean, it's not architectural structure. It's exactly like water cleaning organism, referring to the Nautilus pompilius organism, which is pumping water through his own body. So this was the installation referring to the nature, like learning from nature. So with this type of idea, I came to IMERA to collaborate with Mediterranean Institute of Marine and Terrestrial Biodiversity and Ecology, specifically the Marine Station of Andum and Mediterranean Institute of Oceanography in Marseille. But I discovered that they don't have cyanobacterial research because IMERA focus on the Mediterranean, and Mediterranean Sea doesn't have such problem yet until it will be too late. So they don't have this research. What they have this Saint-Michel Oak Observatory, and it's not only the observatory itself, it's a observatory. The first point, the second one, it's an oak observatory. They research the forest around the Mediterranean, measuring the impact of the climate change on the oak forest, and they discover, of course, of the climate change, less rain and more dry dry situation, but for some reasons forests survive, making kind of exchange with the trees. And also this meteorological station measuring all meteorological data, including the pollution. Also, this Mediterranean Institute of Biodiversity, Marine and Terrestrial Ecology, they have, for the marine, they have a concept of natural heritage, because this protecting area on the land is kind of spread, but for the marine, it's not so useful, or it's very useful, not so usual to protect this ecosystem, which can serve for the mankind. So they're developing this concept as a marine biodiversity, as a heritage of the title XMED. And also, I've been collaborating with the Thierry Perez, who is director of the Andum Marine Station. He's working on the sponge. Sponge is very useful for the research because a sponge react on the ecological situation. It's changing its state because of the pollution. It's become to be sick and die. So researching this sponge, we can monitor the ecological situation in the marine. And the specific research of this station is metabolomics. Also, what is very interesting to research this microstructure of the underwater species, which can serve as a model for contemporary architectural design, because those microscopic images of the plankton give us this kind of source of inspiration, but not only inspiration, it's like construction, how nature construct those microorganisms, which can be brought to macro level, actually. And so with the research of this station, which is focused on the metabolomics research, for me it was very interesting also because metabolomics, it's a part of, part of DNA study, the connection between DNA, genome, RNA, protein, metabolome, showing the relation of the genome, transcriptome, proteome, metabolome, etc. Metabolomes is a systematic study of unique chemical fingerprints specific for the process occurring in living cells, useful for understanding of functioning of biodiversity and as a biomarkers of effect of environmental changes. So the metabolome reflects the interaction between an organism, genome, and its environment. And as a result, an organism metabolome can serve as the excellent probe of its phenotype, product of genotype, and its environment. So this metabolomics research, it's also about data, and it's also about invisible data, and which kind of part of my interest. And metabolite can be measured, identified, qualified, or classified using a number of different technology, including NMR spectroscopy and mass spectrometry. Most mass spectrometry methods must be coupled to various forms of liquid chromatography, gas chromatography, capillary electrophoresis. So this is a nuclear magnetic resonance spectroscopy apparatus useful for this research. This is mass spectrometry, with the description how it's functioning. This is like mass spectrometry, gas chromatography, a gas chromatograph with the headspace sampler. So this part is served for as a headspace sampler. And another modern self-contained HPLC, high pressure liquid chromatography machine. So this is schema which is explain how it's functioning, this high pressure liquid chromatography. And as a result, the scientists, they have data. It's numbers, so they can visualize those data with those graphic representation. Chromatogram with unresolved peaks, with resolved peaks, and using the instrument as a chromatography or paper chromatography or this spectroscopy, I decided to make this invisible data visible in metabolomics model, and also not only to have it as a projection as a on the flat, but go back to the space, because this is data from the environment, and I wanted to bring it back to environment, building this spatial screen structure. And I can probably show a bit. Sorry. No. And it's a first stage of project, because we are planning to go to metabolomics opera, also in collaboration with another participant from IMERA, sound artist from the States, professor of Texas University, which is already collaborated in IMERA with Aix-Marseille University, building Cosma Opera. So this is like next step to approach metabolomics opera. And with the link of our topic of our panel, I'm planning to go from aesthetics to the ethics of care, like presenting this data visually. And for me, this curve and this graphical representation is very important, because you see, it can represent the radioactivity, and it can represent the radioactivity in connection to the cancer in my country, in Belarus, affected by radiation. So that's why this visual representation, I try to bring it to the spotlight, and I try to bring it into space, because I'm like working with the spatial structure as well.
Oksana, the time is more or less up.
Okay, I'm like nearly finished. So with this, I'm finishing from from I started. So like working and going back to the dead zones. With Chernobyl, this is new confinement, which was started in 2015. This is already production, and it's already finished. This is the cooling pound. And the cooling pound is not anymore serving power plant, because it's not working anymore. The cooling pound was always pumping water. So now it start to be dry. So, and the confinement itself already built. And I would like to show you probably just small small video which didn't work on my presentation. And finally, I would like to show you
the time is up, and you also have a question waiting for you.
Okay, we can enter the room, and I can answer. This is Genesis project built in Mozilla hubs with the flyover Pripyat and Chernobyl power plant, and with this monitoring birth rate monitoring.
We don't see the video.
Really?
No.
Okay.
We only see
I don't share the screen anymore.
Yes, you share the screen, but we can only see your presentation open. That's all we see.
Maybe
okay. Oksana?
Okay.
Oh, here. Okay.
Okay, so this is the Genesis project on the Mozilla hubs that you can go online and to be part of this project with this Pripyat flyover and Chernobyl power plant.
Maybe you can post the link to the chat afterwards.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we really have to. We have a question for you from let's see, from Sandra Alvaro. She says amazing projects, and that's really so. I share that one. Please how do you translate chromatography data to immersive installations?
This is a kind of big challenge. This is big challenge because there is no like streaming data of this. We are like working on it. It's mostly archival data, which I asked them to deliver to me. And my concern was that this data will not be so explicit, which is by now it's not very explicit, but visually kind of representative. And so going back to this metabolomic structure, it represents different data which can be they collected during a long period of time, and I condense it, put in on the touch design program, and trying to build those curves, compressing them to be representative as a visual material, but running visual material.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Oksana. We are way over time, so I think we have to continue, but you still have more questions in the chat. Maybe you can go in and have a look and post something to all of us.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.
And thanks for a fantastic presentation. Very, very interesting. But time is short here. The next presenter is then Michael KINDERNAY. Are you ready, Michael?
Yes, I'm ready. Hello.
Great. He is an intermedia artist, sound artist, curator, and performer. His audiovisual installations interconnect art, film, technology, and science. He reflects ecological issues through various technological approaches in relation to the natural environment. His works include video performances, interactive installations, or experimental documentary projects, or sound compositions. He is one of the founders of Yo-Yo non-profit culture organization and initiator of Ruhr Art Map project. He was one of the curators of Skolska 28 Gallery in Prague. He teaches in Prague College, MA Fine Art, and in Center of Audiovisual Studies in Film and TV School of Academy of Performing Arts, Creative Models. As an organizer or artist, he was involved in many international projects. So, welcome to Data Carpets Across Critical History. That's the title of your presentation. Great.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Karla. Hello to all from Prague. I'm very happy to be here, even like in this remote mode. And thank you all presenters. I'm very inspired by a lot of interesting ideas and presentations. So I hopefully I can also add some value from my point of view. So maybe I will share my screen because I prepared my presentation. Just let me know if you can see it. Should share now. Okay, can you see it? Okay, perfect. In today's presentation, I would like to present one of my latest projects, but also in the context of my previous work, and so with some reference to the problematics. I will show more examples of different visualizations and ideas about different ways of showing more or less hidden phenomena towards ecological themes, creatively and with certain appeal. So I could say that the basis of my work is often the tendency to create complex apparatuses or tools presenting and responding to the environment in different ways of transforming the criteria of reality into various forms and contexts. The image, whether analog or digital, is a reflection of light falling on receptors that perceive our initial reality. It acquires, thanks to innovative technologies and procedures, extensive parameters that allow me to create new circumstances and situations. On the picture, you can see a lot of some images from my projects, and I will come to that later. It is long-term and intensive observations, analytical and synthetic image capture and modeling of the area of interest that results in audiovisual recordings or digital images of various forms. My attempts to create apparatuses and mechanisms that strangely structure, slow down, or stretch or distort the real picture, create new horizons of events that point out and declassify phenomena and regularities unnoticeable by our senses. Here, for instance, you can see actually cars or captured sequences, but just without cars. So I can structure the reality or the time of the reality by just erasing cars from the image. So the ability to process image structure, audio frequency, trigger composition, and other sensorial data allows me to create images with an associated message. They are to a certain extent life scores, interactive systems that we can control ourselves or connect them to various types of intelligence with a certain degree of autonomy. Yeah, so let me move to this. So one of such sensory devices with autonomous elements which I have been developing already since 2012, is Camera Altera. Thanks to various sensors, it is able to sensitively perceive the relative atmosphere of the place where it is located. Many processes and settings determine when and how it makes audiovisual diary entries. So it is not just a measuring device, but a sophisticated camera tool that reflects its immediate surroundings. Its autonomy lies in the retrospective evolution of data, which influences the subsequent behavior of the apparatus and its so-called education. There's a feedback. So the user always carries the camera with himself and can control it or influence it in any way. Can't control it is the point. So the camera turns itself on and shoots depending on how dynamic or polluted the environment is. Camera Altera is therefore a personal tool, and the user creates a specific relationship with it. What you can see is actually the documentation from the education manual. And this is another analysis of all the data I recorded with this camera, and it is sorted by the relatively most polluted image. Wind cameras, the prototypes of which I developed as part of the international project Time Inventors Cabinet, also belong to the family of special camera devices. And in this case, however, it is the wind that is captured, stored, and projected directly inside the apparatus. So the individual images reflect the intensity of the wind by blending in the time structures of the film material. Wind decompositions in the natural rhythm, different from the rhythm of classical cameras, can be observed through a small hole in the camera. Another concept is focused on sound pollution. So very briefly, I created a small device which tracked my movements and analyzed the noise around me. And then it makes these drawings. I hope you can see something. It's very detailed. So these drawings are, like focused on different way of mapping, especially my personal shortcuts in the city, where I try to find the most silent tracks. So basically, this is sound map. But let's move forward. Another project I just want to very briefly describe is actually a series of tools and installations collectively called heliophilia or calendarium Kelly. The form of this apparatus, in this case, is adapted to the optical system and software of very slow scanning techniques. Sometimes the scanning takes a whole year. So time-lapse images are actually a record of long-term weather structures with light becoming the main variable and the creative element of time-bound sunrise and sunset. So the result is synthetic studies, audiovisual recordings, commenting on and interpreting everyday dramas in the atmosphere, where the images of this entire calendar year synthesized are into high-resolution digital images, but also as an abstract film. What you can actually see now is a whole year. It's 365, days I recorded the weather, and I captured like millions of pictures or like stills, which then I put together into this kind of abstract or like a procedural kind of film. So you can see actually every column is just one day, and you can actually see how the weather was evolving during the whole year. But okay, let's move to a project that reflects the temporality of somewhat different phenomenon. Works of art of the social period in public space, which is often not positively received by the general public despite its undoubtedly high quality and interesting contemporary context. This is a big switch. So you can see now many beautiful sculptures from the communist times, which are unfortunately usually in very bad state. So in the socialist period of Czechoslovakia, more than 30,000 works of art were created with public money for the interiors and exteriors of new offices, schools, health and shopping centers, agriculture cooperatives, or as a decoration for prefabricated housing estates. And the public space was decorated not only with monuments with ecological ideological content, but also with artistically high quality resolutions and realizations with abstract or non-concrete themes. Unfortunately, works of art of the socialist period are often in a desolate state or disappearing during the reconstruction of buildings. The situation is slowly improving. Today, maps are created and specialized databases are in operation. However, many interesting sculpture and architectural realizations are definitely disappearing, and either due to lack of interest or old age or aggressive non-culture policies of the state or cities. These art realizations of the socialist era have found their admirers and researchers who often have to become activists in order to save the object of their interest. So this is actually what I'm showing is now work by Michal, a sculptor. So it's related to the specific project I was realizing, which is called Walls, Planes, Models and Codes. It is the name of the archival and field research of the 4AM team, and the subject of which is the artistic work of actually two authors. It's this sculptor, Michal, and his son, conceptual artist, Martin Z. So in addition to its figurative position, a significant part of sculptor Michal work is connected with architecture and urban projects of 60s and 70s of last century. What you see are some sculptures in Pankrácz housing estate, and there are many in other places like Opatov metro station, Old Prague Hotel, which was recently destroyed, and other localities are, actually opportunities for reinterpretation and recontextualization of artworks and their current state. So I was invited to do this project and started to work on my interpretation called Data Fabrics, in the place where the sculptor Mojsett still has his sculptures, unfortunately in very bad condition. And I installed cameras and placed sensors that were observing these objects and their surroundings for several months. And sculptures, walls, and other sculpture elements of sculptor Mojsett in Prague housing estate Pankrácz are subject to historical, political, social, weather changes and temperature fluctuations, intense rains and hail, including differences between day and night temperatures, strong UV radiation, etc. And currently, of course, climate change. So data prints on walls consist of time-lapse technology, humidity, temperature, pressure, group of gases affecting air quality, NH3, NOx, benzene, CO2, M10, and PM2.5, dust particles, wind and sound intensity. A lot of data I gathered. So based on these measured data and time-lapse image material, now I created several studies, several layers, deposits of various pollution, which for 5 decades cover works of art, which are thus subject to deposits of time, weather, and pollution. Here you can see 5 days of that. Here you can see much more days. Actually, it's really like a long stripe. And this project was actually online, and it is still online, and every day there is another picture added, so you can actually see it. I will show you this later, but let me just show in the end, the project of the data fabrics, which was updated later on my website, was also transferred to the gallery space, where I projected the resulting data carpets back onto the model of the statue of sculptor Mojsett. So you can see a little bit of here. So this is the gallery version. And actually, this artistic intervention will also take place on the original Z wall in the Pancreas housing estate, I assume in the spring of 2021. And so this is the documentation of the video, and here I can actually share it. There's a link where you can see these data carpets online, updated every day, and so not projected on that project. Well, I think that, okay, so what I wanted to say basically is like, okay, that we can actually use these technologies to reflect the issues, how actually pollution and of course like weather and everything around actually affect the public space, which of course degrades, and especially when you don't take care of it, you can see obviously how dramatically it destroys this cultural value. Even if it was actually made in communist times, it has a big value and artistic value. So that was actually one of the points I wanted to present today here. So that is all for now. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention. I'm happy to answer some questions.
Thank you, Michael, for a very nice presentation. People in the chat want you to post this, the link to see this later online. So you are muted. We can't hear you now.
Sorry, I will do it just now.
Now I can hear you. Yeah. So people ask to post this in the chat, please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you can see it now, and I will also.
Yeah.
The chat disappeared.
Oh, yeah, there's the link. Right.
It's the link, and just give me a second.
Okay.
Okay, I found the chat.
Yeah.
So you can see it actually here. Yeah,
great. Thanks a lot, Michael. Somebody, you have more questions here? This is from Sarah. She asks, Michael, can you say something about the relation between the topics of your research and the spatial aesthetical presentation of it?
Well, that's why maybe I focused on in the beginning of my presentation of different ways how to sonify or visualize different things, like different phenomena, different subjects, like usually with some ecological background or whatever. And this time, when I was asked to actually reflect this issue, which is more into social, let's say, like historical context, I was actually even in this time, I was thinking how actually I can visualize that also the weather and also actually the pollution has its impact, on this subject. And okay, you can see these things online. You could see it in the gallery, but you will also see it in the spring in the place itself, where we actually want to visualize this in the real public space to show people which are passing these sculptures. I don't even think that it is a sculpture. Sometimes you can see people peeing on it. It's very sad, like dogs. I mean, they don't actually see that it is actually artwork. They see it as something very ugly from the past. And so this should be changed in the culture and social, whatever, context. And we have to address this issue.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
The next presenter is Fernando Nobre CAVALCANTE, but I don't see. Oh, there you are. I thought you might not be here. Fernando, are you ready? Please. Fernando, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
hey.
Great. Thank you. Welcome. I didn't see you, so I got worried that you were not present, but there you are. And let me read your bio. Fernando Nobre CAVALCANTE is an associate researcher at the State University of Campinas as a postdoctoral fellow at the Department of Applied Linguistics. Investigates interactions in mediatized groups, developing a project called QualiChat, a software for quantitative analysis aimed at researchers who have an interest in the way the news is spread in WhatsApp groups. PhD in Media Studies and Master in Sociology, Associate Professor at Uni 7, Visiting Professor at the University of Bremen and the University of Kansas. A keen interest in qualitative method innovation applied in the fields of media ethnography. Specialist in human-computer interaction by compiling qualitative perceptions in quantitative reports. And the title of the presentation is Who is Afraid of Ayahuasca? I don't know if I know how to even pronounce that, but now we will hear from you, Fernando. Please, take the floor.
Yeah, nice. You got it. Hey, thank you for having me here. Can I share my screen with you? Can you hear me? Hello? Are you guys hearing me?
Yes, we hear you very well.
Nice. Well, thanks for having me here. It's still earlier in Brazil. I wish if I could be there face to face and personally, and I can follow all the presentations, performance, and definitely it's very important you have an event like this that you can experiment some methods and some perception of researching as artistic way and as a scientific approach, as we call it. Well, as you read my bio, I'm very into to analyze conversations, and I'm develop software and to analyze frames or interaction, especially coming from some TXT file on WhatsApp groups. So this can sound a little bit distant of my research now that I'm going to present. That is called Who is Afraid of Ayahuasca? Ayahuasca is a Brazilian plant from the Amazon. It's like a root, especially roots that usually Indians make a tea. And this is a kind of hallucinogenic tea that it's become very popular in the 30 years ago. In some religions groups, it's called Santo Daime religions groups, mainly focus in north of Brazil and northeast of Brazil, and becoming very popular around the world, especially in Europe and the United States right now. So I did the ethnography fieldworks actually last Saturday. I was at the ceremony, the ritual ceremony, the religion ceremony of this event. And this can sound, as I say, a little bit distant with what I'm doing now, that is research interaction in WhatsApp, especially in far-right groups in WhatsApp. I mean, facing all the populism spreading in Latin America, especially by WhatsApp groups, and sounds that there's kind of transcendental groups. And I mean, could be a family groups or working groups or religions groups or randomic groups that hold ideas and hold perceptions, and how can you go deep about values and ritual and symbolic representation of this group. So the concept of biomedia tell us a little bit Bruno Latour perceptions in terms of the reality can be changed by the presence of non-human actors and add the human perceptions, and this can change a little bit the reality. So the non-human can change a little bit the perception of the reality. And the biomedia concept it's a concept that I think it's important to discuss about ecodata. And I could relate a little bit with the groups ethnography that I'm doing digitally, and seriously, I definitely realized that I need go and I need compare more face-to-face interactions to symbolic representation in WhatsApp groups. So if I'm thinking that there's kind of transcendental groups that hold values, hold ideas in WhatsApp, to understand them better, probably it's important to go deep in transcendental face-to-face growth. So this is the main interesting in this presentation. So I'm just going to share my diary field work, and I have some notes. I didn't have a conclusion now, and I got some questions that I would like to share, and I will try to answer in the next 10 minutes. But how can you operate a media diary? So it's a first question. Escaping from ethnography quantification tendencies. So it's here to see that even the ethnography, it's facing a datafication of everything. And this is a little bit weird. I mean, as I'm analyzing conversation in WhatsApp, quantification is important for me because the frequency, so the frequency of interaction matters to me. But if I'm into some religions group, transcendental group that use hallucinogenity, it's ayahuasca, how can they do quantification? I mean, I don't want to do quantification in this kind of group, but what I know is there's a frequency and there's a patterns in this kind of group that it's important to conciliate to our qualitative works. So how can I operate a media diary without using the media, but in fact understanding and facing the importance of the media in daily life? How do you up the topic? So I consider myself a laugh guy tendency, so definitely I'm not conservative at all. And qualitative research sounds to me that approach the researcher as a taste, as what do you call it, frame of reference. So, hey, things that you don't like, how can you frame topics that you're not into, that you're not, that you dislike? So, if I'm a research study interaction in WhatsApp, and if I'm not identifying myself with populism for far-right groups, how can I frame that? And so this is one question that arises. So even if I'm not a religion member of the indigenous practice, even if I'm not into what is drug, if I'm not into this, how can I frame topics like this? So what is the ethical limits of field involvement? And to what extent can public opinion can consider a transcendental group, as I commented before? Transcendental group, as I'm influenced from Ernest Mahain, a sociology, forgot sociology of cousin of Carl Mahain. And he did a very nice study about public opinion in 1936, specifically 1934, 1936, bringing the concepts of Fernando Toni, and he can understand different kind of linkers in the group. In the first category that he created is the transcendental category. And transcendental for him means that when a group has some vocational action and to talk, to deliberate, there's a plan, a full consensus of decisions in a group. And as I called it before, there's some groups in WhatsApp. WhatsApp, in fact, the symbolic network of communication, WhatsApp, in my perspective, in my doctoral thesis, a little bit compare the face-to-face communication, not in terms of content. So it's a little bit impossible. You compare a face-to-face language and a mediatized language in some group. But there's an anchorage bringing the concepts of Irving Goffman. There's brackets that definitely can be similar and face-to-face and mediatized communication in groups. There are some groups that definitely can have the vocational act to communicate with each other, deliberating ideas, deliberating conceptions. So in the same way, I got this approach to understand a small group that has been creating WhatsApp, something about 20 members, that the members practice the act of ayahuasca act. So I got a trip to something about 13 hours from Fortaleza, my city, to Olinda. Olinda is the other city in northeast. And I could do a operating media diary by a methodology that I would like to share. So the first thing that I did, it's got a normal diary, and then asked some random people about ayahuasca. I mean, framing the ayahuasca by some media tools. So I asked to some random people, specifically to a guy that worked in the graphic, to print photos. I mean, I would like to print photos, and instead I choose the photos. I choose the hashtag ayahuasca, the name of the plant. And instead I choose the photos. Instead I frame the concept of ayahuasca. I ask him to choose. Coincidentally, his wife participate to some ritual, to this ritual, and to him it was more easy. I mean, he never drink the tea, but he is just kind of know the reactions of the tea and the rituals things. And I asked for he choose some pictures and I print. And then I asked for he put names, for he organized the experience putting names, as you can see in the PowerPoint presentation. So he randomly choose the pictures. I mean, he framed the concepts of ayahuasca by the media, by Instagram. And then I asked him to organize his experience putting names, keywords to this picture, and along all diary, I got these pictures that in fact conduce my experience in my ethnography. So after this, I started to write while I was in the bus, and some sentiments, some feelings came to me, especially about fear, aversion, hate, specifically hate, even hate to the topic. As I call it, I don't know if you guys know about the ayahuasca effects, but it's a powerful hallucinogenic drink. And got this drink to me as a little bit rude. And I definitely feel that it's not my my taste, and I could relate all the sentiments, and until I find the informant that brings me to the group. So I got to the city, and I mean, he's my friend. He participated to the ritual ceremony, and he kind of forced me to drink the tea along all these 2 days that I stay with him. And I just put very clear my position. I will participate in the ritual. And this is very important point, because usually if you participate in the ritual, you have to do everything. You have to drink even the tea. And the 3 shots, as the ceremonies say, they offer 3 shots of the tea. In the end, in the last shot, you become very high in terms of perceptions. So how could I frame the research with one topic that you don't like, that you don't have approach? So the conception of as somebody, his perception to put framing, to put keywords, choosing picture, helps me to frame the research. So this could be considered to you guys that I'm trying to do a media diary.
Fernando, your time is up, so you will have to conclude.
I have it, do I?
15 minutes, yes, it's up. You hear me?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, thank you. So, I have the presentation here. I have 1 more minute to finish.
Yes, okay.
So, Rich, it was important power, and I definitely could frame the experience of the group under the 2 questions. Under what circumstances do you think the things are real? And what is that's going here? So this is one important question. What is that's going here at this ceremony? As I say, at the end of the ceremony, I got a single shot, and I could relate my experience. And this transcendental perception that I would like to realize came from the perception of things. So the music was very important communicative way of this group. It's a very important symbolic way. And yeah, well, I realized that music is as a transcendental sphere that becomes the group's more approach. I definitely understand too much individualism at the ceremony. I got some pictures of the ceremony. It's very nice, very beautiful ceremony. Kind of artificial as well. So most of people are there just to get high. I mean, in terms of, as they call it, to get the power. They call it the power, but I call it high. So they get high. And what's very interesting, perception. And well, I appreciate your time. And if you want to talk more about media, probably you have my contact at the end of presentations. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Fernando. I think you moved the topic over to the ethics, which is very important. And unfortunately, the time is now very short, so I think we have to go on to the next speaker. We have a question that maybe we should just pose if it could be very short, because you are asked from Stelios. What would you think would be a good format or medium to realize the outcomes from this research besides text and photos? That's a question for you.
The performance definitely, and I think if I could record my performance at the ritual event and the performance of the group without writing, without photos, that could be nice.
Good. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Fernando.
Thank you. I appreciate your attention.
And then the next speaker is Karla BRUNET. Karla, are you there? Are you ready?
Yes.
Yes. Is it only you presenting, or are some of your collaborators with you?
Toni is here too, but I'm going to do a talk, and then if there is any questions, he can answer the questions too.
Yeah.
But I'm going to do a quick talk.
Yeah. So to save the time, I think I only will read your short bio and not the other people's. Is that okay? And then you can rather present them shortly.
Okay. Yeah, it's me and Toni that's here. The other two.
Okay. Then I take those two. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. For Karla is an artist and researcher, has a PhD in audiovisual communication, UPF Spain, a master's degree in Fine Arts Academy of Art University, USA. She has participated in different media art exhibitions in Europe, the Middle East, North and South. Fernando, you have to mute because we hear your bird. Fernando, can you mute, please?
Oh,
thank you. Yeah. So she has participated in different media art exhibitions in Europe, the Middle East, North and South America. From 2009 to 2012, Karla was the coordinator of a media lab focused on women and free technology. And in 2012, she was the curator of LabMam. In 2014, she got a postdoc grant at UDK Berlin. Karla is a professor at IHAC UFBA, where she coordinates the EcoAesthetics group. Her art practices involve photography, video art, data visualization, sensory environment, hybrid art, audiovisual performance, web art, mapping art, and gaming, always focusing on experiences in nature. And the presentation is named Antarctica Convergence. It is done in collaboration with Toni Oliveira, Carlos Alessandre Domingos Lentinus, José Garcia VIVAS Miranda. And Toni is here, so I read through his bio as well. Toni Oliveira is the coordinator of the undergraduate degree in music production and professor of electronics for the art at UFRB, Federal University of Reconsavo da Bahia. He is an experienced musician and researcher of new open source digital technologies and computer programming contextualized in artistic environments. He holds a master's degree in culture and society by Federal University of Bahia. Theme, the source code in a symbolic context in computational art, a panorama of the relationship between software and culture. that's it. So I give the floor to Karla Brunet and her presentation, Antarctica Convergence, please.
First, I want to thank you, everybody, for having us here and being the opportunity to show, even though we are like all online. And thanks, Raza and all the team for organizing the event. The project I'm going to show here, it's a video that we did especially for this event. We created especially to show here. So it comes from the idea of an image that I saw of all the oceans converging in Antarctica, because we have all these different oceans, but in the end, they are all the same. They all get together in Antarctica. And so the idea was to work with these teams, this idea of the convergence of the oceans, and also the data and the visual and audio based on this data. And for almost 2 months, I was aboard of the Brazilian Navy ship of research in Antarctica. I was in this group from UFBA and UFPE, the university where I work in Brazil. We were there collecting data from biology, chemistry, and physics data from the ocean. Especially, we were not on land in Antarctica, but we were in the ship the whole time. So always collecting ocean data. And this research and this idea, I was the person that was doing the scientific outreach. And then when we came back, I called 2 of the physicists that were working there with me, and also Toni, that's a coding and sound artist. And we decided to do some meetings and think how we could create this piece, the idea of perceiving nature and perceiving the data. So the idea for me was a lot about like drawing in the video with the data. I've been doing before some projects where I draw frame by frame of the video and then create the video. And it's like, it was a project of walking in nature. And then it was the of redoing the walk slowly and drawing. So this now is the idea of drawing with data. And then we did a lot of meetings together thinking how we could use the data and how this data could make us perceive better the environment that we are sensing there. And then in the video, I used some of the data that they gave us, and I used GPS data to do. Usually I did all the animations for the video with processing. And then I use the GPS data, I use salinity, I use conductivity and salinity in one of the animations. I use high tide and low tide also as a drawing, and also tide and days. And also I use temperature as a form of, in the end of the video, you're going to see that the colors change because I use the wave of the temperature as a wave of the color of the video. And then Toni worked with the sound, also with the idea of the same data that I use. He used processing in Python in order to create the waves and to imagine how he's going to do the audio. And he used temperature, salinity to create frequency, intensity, and duration of the sound. And also he used Ardor to edit the videos and also to create 3 different tones. And then if you guys have, I'm going to show the video soon. And then if you have any audio questions, Toni can answer better than me because I'm not the audio person. And also the images, they were all done by me. I did when I was there in Antarctica this year. And this last season, because this year now we're not going to have expedition because of the corona, but the last one. And a lot of times it was not that easy to do the videos and things. So these were like, because we are in a Navy ship and every time I want to get out of the ship, I need a permission and there is all this hierarchy and there is all these priorities. So these are the very few times that I could be in a small boat and then I could do the videos that I wanted. Sometimes it was from the ship. And then these are the results of that. And the idea of also was to have the water, how this confluence, all this water get together. And also I have one of the shots was the CTD, that's a big, huge rosette, a machine that they put in the water to collect water and the data of the ocean. So this is more or less the introduction of the video. And my idea is to show the video and then open to questions. I think it was more like to show our experience creating this. So do I show the video or you guys show? What do you think it's better? Should I share my screen and show the video? Because I sent it before. I can show, no problem. Okay. Is that okay? I'm sharing the screen now. Okay?
Yes.
So should I stop sharing then? Okay. There is no sound. So maybe it's better if I try to show. Just because when we tested, he said it was better if he showed, that's why, but I can show, no problem. Okay. Hi. For me, it didn't look as a video. It was just frame by frame. That's why we tested before, but we didn't know which computer was better to screen. But I sent the link of the Vimeo, and people from Riga said that in YouTube was, when they were streaming, looked nice. So I don't know if you guys saw as me. I saw just frames. I didn't see the smooth video. But I sent the link so you can see the video later. Or it was nice if you have some questions. We can talk more about the creative process. But if you have questions, it would be nicer. But we can... the idea was, because for me, showed like the audio would come first and the video, but you guys can see later to understand better.
Thank you, Karla. We saw it very well. It looked beautiful in my computer, at least.
Good, because mine was really bad.
I felt like I was swimming among the ice in this beautiful sea. But there are no questions or comments still in the chat. Anyone there? We are also quite over time, not with your presentation, but with the whole panel. So I think if there are no more questions, I think we'll just thank you very much, Karla and Toni, for a very nice presentation. And we can get back to you and talk at a later stage, maybe. Because now there is a new panel coming up 4 minutes ago already. So I think I have to thank all presenters and the audience for a very nice session. And then